You open the cellar door in the middle of winter, looking for something to add to supper, and you stop for a second at the bottom step. The shelves are full, jars from the garden lined up in rows, sacks of onions and potatoes in the corner bins, something cured hanging from a hook overhead, and along the back wall, the part of the pantry most people never build for themselves, the deep shelves. 5-gallon buckets, sealed jars, food that isn't going anywhere for a very long time. Because here's the truth almost nobody tells you at the grocery store: most food is built to expire. 6 months, a year, maybe 2 if you're generous. And the store isn't lying to you. The soft cans, the thin labels, the modern additives, that food really does have a countdown on it. But there's another category of food. The kind careful families have stored for generations. Salt, honey, sugar, wheat, rice, dried beans. That food doesn't expire. It outlives the person who put it on the shelf. Archaeologists have pulled sealed honey out of 3,000-year-old Egyptian tombs, and it was still good to eat. That's not an exaggeration. That's documented. My name is your name, and I keep a deep pantry the way it used to be kept before the grocery store became most families' only food plan. Today, I'm walking you through 13 foods that, stored properly, basically never go bad. Some of these you already know: salt, honey, rice, beans. A few might surprise you. Apple cider vinegar, whole wheat berries, dried field corn. All 13 are real, all 13 are proven, and none of them require a special skill or a big budget to start. Quick note before we get into the list: I go a lot deeper into the how of all this, the exact methods my family uses, in a guide over at yourwebsite.com. I'll drop it once here and let the video speak for itself after that. Alright, let's get into the 13. Numbers 1 to 3, salt, sugar, and honey. The 3 pantry kings. I'm grouping these together because they share one property. Kept dry, none of them will ever spoil. These 3 are where every deep pantry should start. Salt is sodium chloride, a mineral, not an organic substance, and people have used it to preserve food for something like 8,000 years. Salt mined a century ago is chemically identical to salt mined this morning. It doesn't break down, it doesn't age, it doesn't go bad. The only thing that happens to salt is that moisture makes it clump. Clumped salt is still perfectly good salt. Break it up and use it. A big bag from a feed store or hardware store runs you maybe $10 or $12 and will outlast most of your kitchen appliances. Sugar, sucrose, is a more complex molecule, but in its dry form it's remarkably stable. Sealed and kept dry, it simply doesn't spoil. It can harden as it pulls in trace moisture from the air, but again, that's cosmetic, not spoilage. One thing worth knowing: don't throw an oxygen absorber in with your sugar. Oxygen absorbers pull moisture too, and they'll turn a bag of sugar into something closer to a brick. Sugar just wants a clean, dry, airtight container. Nothing fancier. Honey might be the single oldest preserved food humans have on record. That Egyptian tomb honey I mentioned, it's real, it's been tested, and it was edible. The chemistry explains why honey is under 18% water, over 80% sugar, and naturally acidic. Bacteria simply can't survive in that environment. Honey does crystallize over time, sometimes within months, and a lot of people toss it out thinking it's spoiled. It isn't. Set the jar in warm water for 10 minutes, and it goes right back to liquid. Same honey. Still good. Salt, sugar, honey. Buy them in bulk when you're able, keep them dry, and never throw them away just because they've hardened or crystallized. Number 4. Canned meat. Whether it's store-bought canned chicken, beef, or fish, or meat you've home-canned yourself after a butchering day, canned meat lasts well past the date stamped on the label. That date is about peak quality, not safety. A properly sealed can with no damage will typically stay safe for 10 to 20 years past that stamp, sometimes longer. Here's the part that matters more than anything else in this whole video. A damaged or improperly sealed can is dangerous. Botulism can develop in compromised cans, and botulism can kill you. Throw out, without tasting, any can that's bulging on the top or bottom, that hisses or spurts when you open it, that smells off in any way, or that shows mold or discoloration inside. Never taste test a can to check if it's still good. If it looks wrong, smells wrong, or sounds wrong, it goes in the trash. The cost of a can is nothing. The cost of getting this wrong is everything. With that said, properly sealed canned meat is one of the most dependable long-term proteins you can put on a shelf. Number 5. White rice. White rice is one of the most studied long-storage foods out there, and the research is consistent. Stored properly with an oxygen absorber in a sealed container, white rice lasts 25 to 30 years without losing nutrition or taste. The reason comes down to oil. Brown rice still has its bran layer, and the natural oils in that bran go rancid within a few years. White rice has had that bran milled away, leaving a dry starch grain with almost no oil to spoil. That's what makes it shelf-stable for decades instead of years. The method? A food-grade Mylar bag inside a 5-gallon food-grade bucket with an oxygen absorber sized to the volume, heat-sealed shut. A 5-gallon bucket holds roughly 30 pounds of rice, costs somewhere in the $25 to $35 range, and will feed a family for weeks. Kept cool, dark, and dry. That bucket is good for 25 years. Brown rice isn't a long storage food. White rice is. Number 6, pasta-dried pasta stores almost identically to white rice. 20 to 30 years sealed in Mylar with an oxygen absorber. It's made from durum wheat semolina, which is low in fat and moisture once it's dried, and that's what gives it its long shelf life. Spaghetti, macaroni, penne. All of it stores the same way. One exception, egg noodles. The egg content shortens their prime shelf life to somewhere around 5 to 10 years before quality starts to slip, though they're still safe to eat after that. A 5-gallon bucket of pasta runs about $30 and pairs beautifully with a shelf of canned tomatoes for a lot of easy meals down the road. Number 7, dried beans. Dried beans have been the backbone of long storage pantries for about as long as people have kept pantries. Pinto, Black, Navy, Kidney, Great Northern, Lima. They all store the same way, and they all last 25 to 30 years in Mylar with an oxygen absorber inside a sealed bucket. One honest note, old beans take longer to cook. A pound that cooks in 2 hours fresh might take 4 or 5 hours after a decade in storage. They're still perfectly safe. They just need a longer soak, closer to 12 to 18 hours instead of the usual overnight. Some people add a pinch of baking soda to the soak water to help along the way, though that's optional. A large bag of dried beans is one of the cheapest sources of stored protein you'll find anywhere. Number 8, canned fruits and vegetables. Like canned meat, canned produce holds up well past its printed date. Commercial cans often 5 to 15 years past, and home canned jars similarly if done correctly. The same safety rule applies here without exception. Any bulging, hissing, foul-smelling, or discolored jar or can gets thrown out. No tasting required. Home canning your own garden harvest, tomatoes, green beans, peaches, pickles, gives you jars that hold up for 5 years and beyond in a cool cellar, as long as the seal is solid and you inspect carefully before eating, if this is giving you a clearer picture of where your own pantry has gaps. That's exactly the point. Stick around because the second half of this list covers some foods people almost never think to store long term. Number 9, rolled oats. Old-fashioned rolled oats, not the instant kind, store for 20 to 30 years using the same Mylar and oxygen absorber method as rice and beans. Nutritionally, oats are hard to beat for a long-term pantry, high fiber, decent protein, low fat, and genuinely versatile. Oatmeal for breakfast, ground into a rough flour for baking, mixed into a meatloaf as a binder. A 5-gallon bucket holds around 30 pounds and costs about $25, one of the best value items on this whole list. Number 10, powdered milk. Non-fat dry powdered milk sealed in Mylar with an oxygen absorber keeps for around 20 years in cool, dry storage. Let's be honest about it. It doesn't taste exactly like fresh milk on its own. It's a bit thinner and sweeter. But for cooking and baking, it performs almost identically to fresh. Pancakes, biscuits, sauces, cocoa. If you're drinking it plain, mixing it the night before and chilling it makes a real difference. For households with kids, this is one of the more overlooked but important items to have on hand. Number 11, wheat berries whole. Wheat berries, the unground kernel before it becomes flour, are one of the most valuable long storage foods there is. Hard red, hard white, soft white, it doesn't matter. Sealed in Mylar with an oxygen absorber, they store for 25 to 30 years. The reason wheat berries outlast flour comes down to the hull. Once wheat is ground into flour, the oil-rich germ is exposed to air and starts going rancid within months, which is exactly why store-bought flour has a shelf life measured in about a year. Keep the kernel whole, though, and it can sit sealed for a quarter century, ready to be ground fresh whenever you need it. The catch is you'll need a grinder. A hand crank model runs around $100 and lasts basically forever. Grind only what you need for the week, and the rest stays sealed. Fresh ground flour also just makes better bread than anything off a store shelf. Number 12, apple cider vinegar. Sealed and unopened, apple cider vinegar has essentially an indefinite shelf life. At roughly 5 to 6% acetic acid, it's naturally antimicrobial. Nothing harmful survives in it. It's useful for cooking, pickling, cleaning, dressings, and a dozen other household jobs, which makes it worth keeping on hand regardless of its shelf life. 2 things you might notice over the years. The vinegar may darken slightly, which is just trace sugars slowly caramelizing, and it's completely normal. And you may see a stringy, cloudy clump form at the bottom of the bottle. That's the mother, a live bacterial culture, and it's a sign of quality, not spoilage. Strain it out or leave it in. Either way, the vinegar is fine. Number 13, dried whole corn. Last on the list, and maybe the most traditional item here, whole dried field corn or flint corn, the kind that's been ground into cornmeal and corn mush for generations, stores for 25 to 30 years sealed in mylar with an oxygen absorber, same as wheat berries. Ground fresh as needed, dried corn becomes cornmeal for cornbread, johnny cakes, or polenta. Soaked in food-grade lime, it becomes hominy. It can also serve as feed for chickens or livestock. One important distinction: cornmeal that's already been ground and bagged at the store only lasts about 5 to 10 years, even sealed, because the germ is exposed and the oils start to break down. Buy it whole, store it whole, and grind only what you're about to use. How to actually store all of this. The storage method matters just as much as the food itself. For the dry goods on this list, rice, pasta, beans, oats, powdered milk, wheat berries, dried corn, the standard approach is the mylar and bucket method. Take a food-grade 5-gallon bucket, line it with a food-grade mylar bag, aluminum laminated plastic. Fill the bag with your dry food. Add an oxygen absorber size to the bag, roughly 2,000 to 2,500 cubic centimeters for a 5-gallon bucket. Press out as much air as you can. Heat seal the top of the mylar bag with a clothes iron on moderate heat, a hair straightener, or a vacuum sealer with a sealing function. A clean seal across the full width of the bag. Snap the bucket lid on tight. The bucket gives you physical strength and keeps pests out. The mylar seals out oxygen and moisture. The oxygen absorber finishes the job by creating a low oxygen environment where mold, bacteria, and insects can't survive. Put all three together and you get 25 to 30 years of storage life. Skip any one of them and you lose most of that benefit. Older generations didn't have mylar. They relied on stoneware crocks, canning jars, tins, and a cool root cellar, and they still got 5 to 15 years out of those methods. Use the mylar and bucket method for your deep long-term reserves, and the older methods for the things you're rotating through faster on the kitchen shelf. Both have their place, and don't underestimate temperature. The general rule is cool, dark, and dry, ideally under 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Roughly speaking, every 10 degrees cooler about doubles your shelf life. A pantry sitting at 60 degrees Fahrenheit will outlast one sitting at 75 degrees Fahrenheit by a wide margin, which is exactly why old farmhouses built root cellars in the first place, bringing it all together. Look at what we just covered. 3 pantry kings, salt, sugar, honey, that families have kept for thousands of years without a single special tool. 5 long storage staples, rice, pasta, beans, oats, powdered milk, that turn a modest investment into 20 to 30 years of food security. Wheat berries and dried corn, the grains that become bread and meal for a family all year from one sealed bag. Apple cider vinegar, the one preservation liquid every serious pantry keeps stocked. And canned meat, fruit and vegetables, the bridge between fresh food and dried storage, good for years past the date on the label as long as the seal holds. Fill a pantry with all 13, buying carefully in bulk, and you're realistically looking at a few $100s for a year of basic food for a family of 4. Scale it up for a bigger household or a longer runway. That's less than a month of ordinary grocery spending for a lot of families, as a one-time investment against bad weather, illness, supply hiccups, or just the peace of mind of knowing the shelves are full. Nobody's making money teaching people to buy 6 months of food once and be done with it for a year. There's a lot more money in selling that same family groceries every single week, forever. That's a big part of why this kind of knowledge lives mostly in old farm cookbooks and in the households that never stop practicing it, while most modern kitchens have a fridge that spoils in 2 weeks and nothing else behind it. That's a fragile way to eat. A deep pantry is the fix. So here's what I'd ask you to do this week. Go look at your own pantry or cellar, honestly. For most people, what's there is maybe 2 or 3 weeks of food. That's thin. Start small, a bag of salt, a bag of sugar, a jar of honey, $20, and it lasts you years. Then add 1 bucket project a month, rice this month, beans the next, oats after that, a year of small monthly additions, and you've got a genuinely deep pantry. Thousands of meals, every one of them good for the next 25 to 30 years. Remember the rule: cool, dark, dry, under 70 degrees Fahrenheit, sealed with oxygen absorbers in the dry goods buckets. Take care of the storage, and the storage takes care of you. Let me know in the comments. Which of these 13 do you already have stocked, and which one have you never stored before? If your family kept a deep pantry growing up, I'd genuinely like to hear what was on those shelves and how it was kept. That kind of knowledge disappears fast when nobody writes it down. Next time, I want to walk through your next topic, e.g., rendering lard, curing meat, root cellar building. It's a natural next step from everything we covered today. Until then, fill the buckets, seal the bags, and build the kind of pantry that doesn't need the grocery store to bail it out.